Hello and welcome back to Data Driven Finance, brought to you by Envestnet Yodlee. I'm Mike Stiles. My guest today is Larry Rosenberger, Research Fellow at FICO. He's also an advisor and serves on multiple boards of directors for early-stage startups. Before moving into his role as Research Fellow, he was CEO and VP of R&D at FICO. We want to make it clear that these are Larry's own views. He does not speak for FICO. Came out of MIT and the UC Berkeley College of Engineering. Now, we're going to be talking about predictive and behavior analytics for decision making. So, Larry, thanks for being willing to give us a few moments of your time today.
Happy to be here.
You know what? Take me back to the spark of the idea for the FICO score. Now, over 90% of lenders use it. It has such an impact on most people's lives. This was a tool to help lenders make loan decisions that didn't exist before that?
Yes. And it was a small team. And this goes back into about 1985 when we did a couple, I think 3 projects that were for pre-score. That's when pre-score happened. And so we were using the credit bureau data, and then we were using individual lenders to see did they respond. And then I remember very distinctly, we were in a room, there might have been a half a dozen people, and somebody said, wait a minute, we could do 2 snapshots of credit bureaus. And then we can have something that's robust and it doesn't have to be done for every client. And we looked at each other and we said, yikes, we think that could be a big idea.
Well, do you think most people understand their score and how to improve it? I mean, we're going to get deeper into your thoughts on communication, but a lot of people have kind of an adversarial relationship with the whole credit score system.
Yes, I think we went into the marketplace in a big way, I would say about 1989 or thereabouts. And somewhere about a decade after, we went directly to consumers, and it's myfico.com, where we tried to provide just education. So we wanted to demystify this FICO score. And there's been plenty of blogs and stuff, some of which is informative and some of them is disinformation about the FICO score. But it's easier to learn. And you're right also that for some people, they see it or they're not comfortable with it. In one way, it's like, well, this is between me and getting credit. So the score is the bad guy, because if they can't get the score, or the credit card or the auto loan or the personal loan or the mortgage or whatever. And we started in the US, and then we went to Canada and South Africa, and now we're over 30 countries with FICO Score. So I think for this audience, we're probably most interested in the US version.
Well, the credit score is certainly not all FICO does. Tell us what it offers the financial services world beyond that.
So we're best known for the FICO credit score, but we also have delivered software for our lenders to try to help them make better decisions for their existing customers. Like, well, should we increase a credit limit? Or, gee, they just went delinquent. What should we do? Should we leave them alone and they'll take care of it? Or what kind of action should we take? And if you happen to get overline, should the lender say, oh, it's a small amount, let it go, et cetera. So we have software and analytics that helps to make those kinds of decisions. And then the other thing I would point to is we have a well-known solution in the world of fraud, especially credit card transactions, trying to detect. And I don't know if you've had something like a call or a text that says, gee, there's a suspicious thing. Did you do $723 in Chicago? And then you say, wait a minute, that's not me. Or you might say, well, I'm here where I am, but my wife is visiting in Chicago, so it's probably okay. That analytics and that software comes from FICO.
Yeah, I'm still having trouble getting my wife convinced that I didn't spend a week in Vegas going out of control.
Well, yes, there is that. The other thing is beyond credit, and we do credit in the worlds of telco because it turns out you get a bill and you consume the service, and then you pay, or in some cases you don't pay. And retailers too. You do purchases on their credit card, a store card, and then we do work there on the financial side. But to make something more esoteric that goes beyond, I'll call it beyond credit, we're about to put the third version of the FICO Safe Driving Score into the marketplace, and this is for safety for fleet drivers. And we eventually have ambition to go to safety for consumer drivers, but right now we're in the world of fleet drivers. So that has nothing to do with credit. And we'd have some other projects in the world of medical adherence. And I have one project as a research fellow and about to have a second one for student success to help students who graduate from high school and they start to college. And the question is, can you help them to reach their academic goals?
Wow, so well beyond the credit score world, FICO's doing all this stuff. Clearly, you've had a passion for analytics-centric solutions that help in decision making across all industries, not just FinServ, but now the idea of analytic solutions with a learning mechanism attached to it is getting turbocharged because of these new technologies. Kind of describe that setup to us and how new technologies are making new things possible.
Well, the first learning solution that we put in the marketplace was about the same time as the FICO credit score. One of the things for that, helping our lender clients to manage their own customers. If you have an idea, and we use the simple metaphor of champion challenger. So your champion is, what decision strategy do you have for your customers? Let's pick something specific, credit line increases. So you have something that you're doing now, so we call that the champion. And that's the best you know how to do today. But then you try to design and imagine and create challengers to your best ideas to do better. And then you randomize your customers, and then you track. It's like a horse race. And then you see there's business metrics that you care about, losses, volume, whatever it happens to be, profitability. And so then the question is, do any of your challengers beat the champion? And if it does, then you promote one of the challenger that looks best, and it's the new champion, and then you do it again. And so that is a learning mechanism. And my favorite story is, well, when do you stop? And the answer is when you don't have a new idea.
A big part of your career has actually been spent thinking about human capital and organizing internally to deliver the highest value. If I'm a human in FinServ right now, how do I position myself to continue to be needed and critical as these new tools come online that do what people used to do?
Yeah, to me, it's a great question. And I'll back up a little bit to say I have and developed over my career a simple mechanism or a way to think about leading people. So think about a very simple 3x2. The first one is perform. Can you perform with your job? The second row is grow. And that's where you're just going to right now. Can you grow through your career so you can get more expertise, different expertise, and deepen or broaden your experience? So that's growth. And then since I started that, the third row is enjoy. Because if you don't enjoy your job or your career, then it's not sustainable. And so in the two columns is one for leading is one column is the as an individual. Am I performing? Am I growing? And am I enjoying myself? And then the second column is as a team. Can we perform as a team? Can we grow as a team? And can we enjoy? My simple notion of leading is for everybody that reports to you, you try to get to the point where every person can check all 6 boxes.
That's going to be a big self-challenge to a lot of our listeners. I'm going to kind of put myself through that process too, see where I land. Give me your definition or the Rosenberger view of exactly what predictive analytics is.
Predictive analytics to me is, first of all, I think of it as a science and an art, or an art and science. And so you start typically with data that you have at a certain point when you're going to make a decision, and then you try to predict what would be the behavior, the key behavior or behaviors that matters to you. So, for instance, let's go back to that decision about a credit line increase. So you'd be interested to say, well, if we give them an increase, are they going to do anything different? Are they going to purchase more? Are they going to bring their balance a little higher? And that makes it profitable. If they put more money in and then they ramp up their balance, are they going to continue to pay, or are they going to manage to overload themselves? So those are the things that what's important for us to predict. And then we use the data. But here's the key thing for FICO. We think of not only the data, but also the domain expertise for the people who are experts in credit limits and working with credit card holders. And so we try to bring both domain expertise and data. If it's just data, then you can hire a PhD that in data science, and they'll build you algorithms. And they'll think about, well, how predictive can it be? But Fair Isaac thinks about not only prediction, a predictive power, but also is it explainable? Does it make sense? Is it fair? Is it robust over time? Is it robust over gaming for people who are trying to cheat in some ways by gaming the algorithm? We think about all those things. And so we use, again, domain expertise and data to make such predictions.
Yeah, I love that because a lot of people just stop at the data. I mean, so many businesses and so many industries are drowning in data, not really sure what to do with it or how to use it or how to infuse the human element in it. But that kind of takes us to something beyond predictive analytics that started happening kind of in the 2000s, which is prescriptive analytics. Are we getting to a place now where the data will not only predict a likely outcome, but will advise an appropriate action?
The answer is yes. Again, looking at FICO's history, we started putting those solutions into the marketplace, I believe, in early 2000s. So that's been like 20 years that we've done that. And I don't want to overuse the example, but one of the things is we work pretty hard on credit card issuers to help them to make better decisions. And so we would not only have the learning that I mentioned, that a champion challenger, but also we would do statistical models to try to figure out what kind of better solutions. So now some people will just say, well, we're going to optimize our decisions. Personally, I think that's baloney, because being a business person, you say, oh, they only care about profit. That's simply not true. For lenders, you care about volume for your portfolio, and do people use the product? Do they pay? So credit losses. And you do care oftentimes both short-term profitability and sometimes long-term profitability. And then, depending on what kind of a lender you are, you might care about what kind of capital you consume. So now you care about maybe 3 key metrics. So think about what the economists would call an efficient frontier. And so what we do in our world of decisions is we try to create a more efficient frontier. So where they're operating, our clients is operating now as an interior. So then they can take the wins in any of these dimensions or some blend to get to an efficient frontier.
So one of the reasons I was really excited to talk to you was your approach to behavior analytics. And I think a lot of people may think they know what that means, but you've kind of divided it up into 4 pillars, and that I'd kind of like to touch on. The first 2 of those is behavioral economics and behavioral psychology. What are those and how do they differ?
So some people would say those are the same thing. It's all behavioral psychology, but I think it's useful to break those into 2 pieces. And behavioral economics is generally how they make economic decisions. And Kahneman and Tversky I guess it was just Kahneman who got the Nobel Prize to moving economics to behavioral economics. When I studied it a zillion years ago at MIT, all the assumption was, quote, literally, the rational man. And so a lot of the classic economics was based on that assumption. But it's very clear and intuitive for people who spend time making decisions and they look to see what their family does or their crazy uncle and how do they make decisions. And the answer is it's completely different. And so the behavioral is how do people make decisions? And then you also, part of that is understanding various biases. And they studied, I love these different biases. So, and marketers trick us because they put a number or a price or something in there. It's called anchoring bias. And they're deliberately trying to do that for the buyers. So there's other kinds of biases. And so studying where people get off the track when they make decisions. So that's that one, the first pillar. The second one is, in some sense, not only how do they make decisions, but the second pillar is often how do they decide what's important to, if they say, I want to change my behavior, so I have to try to create a good habit, or maybe I have to try to break a bad habit. And so that's the second pillar. And I think it's useful to distinguish those different types of input into behavioral analytics.
And the third pillar is gamification, which a lot of business leaders might take lightly, but you see it as kind of a key to engagement.
Yes, the main thing is engagement. And I've never been a gamer, but I have sons and they're kind of past that. But I've got 4 grandchildren and 3 of them are gamers. If you don't like the gaming framing, they try to, as a game, they try to engage you and keep you engaged. And so in terms of if you've got any B2C, business to consumer business, you typically, if you've got customers, you want to keep them engaged. And so we can learn a lot in that sense. Another phrase that I think was very useful in that world is a lot of apps for consumers from providers, their process. Oh, if you want to lose weight, here's what you need to do. If you want to I'll stay in health. If you want to sleep better, here are some things you can do. So it's very kind of process oriented, but the world of gaming, a whole area, and it's been called human-centric design as opposed to process design. And I think that's all really good to focus on the individual and what matters to them.
Yeah, and pillar 4, which is of particular interest to me because communications is my business, is bilateral conversations. I never cease to be shell-shocked at the inability of many organizations to know and talk to their customer in ways that actually attract the customer to them. What are your thoughts on creating conversations that actually work?
Yes. If you go back, I talked about this at a FICO World Conference probably in 2010. So let's say about 14 years ago. And the notion was, gee, instead of the consumer marketers, they had, here's the practice back then. If they wanted to learn something, they would get marketing research surveys, which were big marketing, and they were usually expensive, and interviews, et cetera. And then the other kind is you can just have a small group. They're behind the mirrors and you watch a small group, and they use that like this year in terms of politics. Why would you vote for X or Y? And so these small forums is another way to get insights. It's anecdotal. But the main metric for chief marketing officers, for providers, for any kind of providers for consumers, their main metric is volume. So they often will carpet bomb you with, oh, would you like this? Would you like that? Oh, how about this? And my favorite example is a big bank. They've had my business for more than 20 years, and they keep sending me convenience checks. After 20 years, they push my nose into the reality. They don't know me and they don't care. Otherwise, and so the fact that they're annoying me because they don't take the time to understand me as an individual, or if you prefer, a micro segment. And so this bilateral notion is, especially over the last 10 years, there is a cheap communication channel, which are texts. And so Fair Isaac has something called customer communication in our new platform, and we've had this for a while. So I use that use case of fraud. Gee, we've got this a text that says, did you really buy something for $700 in Chicago? So you can go back. So that's a dialogue. And they initiated that. And another case is, gee, we noticed that you didn't pay. Is there something we can help you with? Or is there an issue? And then you can respond and say, look, I'm just late, or wait a minute, I just lost my job. Can we talk about how I can pay you back more slowly, or something like that? So that's an example of one-on-one, but the channel became very cheap. So those dialogues, I think, are absolutely critical And so the frontier is, instead of these chatbots, a chatbot is, I'm coming as a customer to you because I've got some kind of an issue or I have a question, and you're responding. But as a provider, you could initiate a conversation and you could say, to serve you better, here are a very small number of questions that we want to understand where your preferences are. Do you have a certain preference for a channel? How frequently would you like to hear from us? And my favorite story there, Nordstrom's online sent me something that said, here are all the departments. Which of our departments are you interested in? And as it turns out, back then, I used Nordstrom's to buy gifts for my wife. And so they gave me 20 choices, and they had men's clothing, but there was nothing about women's clothing. And I laughed out loud, and I said, well, either I'm buying for a wife or I'm a cross dresser. But I can't explain that to you because you didn't give me that choice in this dialogue.
Right. Yeah, I've had to tell so many clients that, if you pursued romantic relationships the way you pursue customers, you would be so alone.
Thank you for that, Mike. That's hilarious, I think. And you're absolutely true. It is absolutely true. And the point is, there's this possibility, again, if I go back to behavioral jargon, it's like, if the provider says, I'd love to understand your personal utility function, what you care about, either content or the channel or the way you want to interact, how frequently, or if I'm trying to help you, do you want me to sound like, as a coach, do you want me to sound like a drill sergeant or a cheerleader, or just tell me the facts, please, et cetera. And it's so easy to do it with the current technology. But the largest providers in financial services, especially, they haven't rethought things. Their CMO is still pounding volume. Again, another funny story. It was a loyalty program for an airline, and we were talking about, and they were trying to get new customers. And I casually said, well, how do you keep them? And the person said, I don't care. If they drop off, that gives me a chance to get them back in, because it was new account volume was the only metric that exec cared about. And you look at it and said, well, I don't think I want to be an investor in that airline.
You're right. Well, Larry, it's been a real pleasure having you on as a guest. I really enjoyed this. If listeners want to find out more about FICO and some of the things we've been talking about, how can they do that?
Well, the easiest thing is to go to FICO.com. And we have history, and we have a lot of these products and solutions that we've mentioned. And also, I think the last plug I would say is we have conferences that we do annually, and we move them around in the U.S. And we've been focusing on a decision platform for other providers can use our platform to make better decisions. So I would say, again, if you go to FICO.com, you'll see an emphasis there.
All right. We appreciate that. And for you listeners, go ahead and subscribe to the show. As you can hear, it can help you be the smartest person in the room if you aren't already. And if you want to see how aggregated financial data might be of great use in your business, just visit resources.yodlee, that's YODLEE.com/podcasts. And we'll see you next time on Data Driven Finance.